Hello there and welcome to today's video, which is all about my most enduring special interest as an autistic person, which may well be quite relatable to a fair few of you out there, but it's essentially art, illustration and all things creative. So if you've been following me for any length of time, you'll know that I always have this background which is full of little clay models, and I have actually made these myself. I know it's not always clear to people because I have been asked a few times where I've got my collectibles from, but they're all hands made by me. I am a clay artist and I've been making clay models for about 10 years now, although I have been on hiatus for the last year. But I thought it was about time that, I talked about it really. So what better way to talk about my clay models than to demonstrate how I actually make them. So yeah, I've come out of my creative or sculptor hibernation to make a one-off model, and the person that I chose was Nathan Fielder. So who is Nathan Fielder, I hear some of you ask? Well, he is a Canadian comedian, and I was fairly recently introduced to his work by Fern Brady, who's a Scottish comedian who I really love. And Nathan has a show called The Rehearsal on, well, it's Now TV here in the UK, so I'm not entirely sure what other channels he's appeared on with this show, but he also had a show called Nathan For You, some years ago, but I'm really talking about The Rehearsal today because it is such an incredible show. Nathan Fielder has been pretty much embraced by the autistic community for his type of comedy. Really, it is unclear as to whether Nathan himself is autistic, but the persona that he has as his comedian, because he's playing a version of himself, like many comedians do. I'm thinking of Stuart Lee and I think Paul Foot to some extent as well, who's another comedian I really enjoy. But Nathan kind of really embraces a kind of more awkward style of comedy. And I don't want to tell you too much about The Rehearsal because I think if you haven't seen it, it's actually best to go into it without knowing very much about it, because that's how I went into it and I was just amazed by it because it's just so brilliant. The only thing I will say, which may pique your interest if you haven't come across Nathan's work, is that his work is, well, specifically in The Rehearsal, is it's like a deconstruction of autistic masking, and that's all I want to say on it really, because I think you should just watch it with few expectations really. But today I wanted to make Nathan in a pilot suit of all things, because season 2 of The Rehearsal covers the aviation industry, which isn't something that probably first comes to mind when we think about a comedy show. But it's, very strongly themed on pilots and the aviation industry. So I just thought I'd make him in a pilot suit. So let's go over to my clay desk and I'll show you how I made the model of Nathan Fielder. Right, so firstly, welcome to my clay desk here. So I'm just, working on the very basics of Nathan's head here, and this is a really time-consuming process, and this was the second attempt, which isn't unusual. I have, tried various attempts on different models before, because it's really hard to capture a likeness. And it's a case actually of the more you do it, I don't want to say easier, because it's never easy to capture a likeness, but I don't know, you kind of get used to that process. You start to really zone in on the characteristics of a face really. So you get kind of more used to it, although it doesn't necessarily get easier. So yeah, here I am, just kind of building on his face, creating a couple of eye sockets. And I've always been creative throughout my whole life, really, and I kind of got into sculpting by accident, really. It was due to the fact that I went back to arts education in my early 30s because I've spoken about this a few times, actually. I had to finish my arts education when I was 17. I just wasn't getting on with my dad, so I went into the kind of workplace, and it just was always nagging away at me, this drive to get back into arts education, because I kind of met a few people from work who became friends who were artists, and they always had arts degrees, and I was just so envious of them because I just felt that I kind of wasn't good enough. Although I'd always been creative, and I'd invariably have some kind of creative stuff going on in the background. And it's always been drawing. I was always drawn to drawing as a young child, and through my teenage and adult years. And I went back to arts in education, really in the hope of becoming a better illustrator, really. So I had hoped to hone my skills in drawing, and just to develop myself as an illustrator through that time. And yeah, it was at art college that there was just this one day that we decided that we'd experiment with clay. So it was essentially a clay workshop, and I just felt really drawn to the, the material, really. As a child, although I loved drawing, I also loved creating kind of 3D dioramas with cardboard boxes, etc. So yeah, I'd always been really drawn to the more kind of tactile nature of being creative. So I was drawn to this 3D material, really, in the form of clay. And it was, really obvious that I had a skill for it, really. And I think that's probably because my illustration style has kind of lended itself to kind of 3D sculpting style. There's a real kind of cartoon aesthetic to both my drawing style and my sculpture style. So it kind of lent itself to it really, really well. And at this stage, I should go back to what's going on here. I've baked both Nathan's legs and his head, so I'm using some wet clay here to bring both the elements together. In case you're wondering, how is Lizzie making that sort of come together with wet clay? Some elements are hard and others soft, because my models generally go through a few baking procedures, and usually about kind of 2 or 3, usually 3 actually, come to think about it. So now I can basically start working on his body, and I am putting Nathan obviously in a pilot suit here, so it's just a white shirt and a black tie. So yeah, basically going back to my arts education, I was on a multimedia course, so it meant working in kind of different ways. So for a couple of my projects, I basically used clay because I was really drawn to this material and I wanted to experiment with it further. So one project I had, I named May Contain Spoilers, and it was actually a photography project, but I basically reinterpreted movie scenes, and I used very kind of basic sculptural work, and some kind of doll's house elements, so doll's house furniture, just to recreate these scenes. And yeah, I just loved that project. I just wish that I could have invested far more time into it, because everything looked kind of pretty rough and ready, because obviously I had to create I think 40 or 50 film scenes just with very basic clay characters. But gosh, can you imagine if I'd had maybe, I don't know, 2 or 3 years to invest into that project? So yeah, no doubt I've come out with really quite impressive looking photographs, or photographic illustrations really. But I just really loved that project. I just thought, actually, while I'm talking about this may contain spoilers project, I might as well show you some of the artwork. So I made basically a book out of all of the photographic illustrations I made, and they are all horror movies, which I realise isn't everybody's bag, so I'll just show you a couple. So there's Nosferatu. I don't know how well you're going to see it. And there's the Elephant Man, which again, I don't know how well you can see, but I'm sure you get the idea. And it was when I left art college that I just reinvented myself as a clay artist, really. So although I've never been formally trained in clay work, I've invested so much time into it that I'm, completely self-taught. But I feel like I'm sort of proficient with the material, well, to an extent anyway. But it's kind of broken my heart over the last year that I've just not been able to invest as much time, into my clay work as I'd hoped, really. So yeah, this model isn't as good as it could have been. And this bit's interesting, actually. It just shows how difficult sometimes it is to recreate things in clay, because this just looks bonkers. A pilot has 4 yellow strips on their suit cuff, but it just looked just ridiculous on this model. So I went through just some experimentation here, but it just looked kind of terrible, really. So I ended up taking all of that, all of those yellow lines off, because it just sort of wasn't working. I just I think because I've not used clay for a year, it's really difficult to work on the sort of finer details, or to try and remember how I'd problem solve these kinds of areas, really. So I just basically added his arms back on, and eventually worked out that if I added just 2 lines of the yellow clay, it wouldn't look, I don't know, wouldn't look quite as kind of stupid, really. So yeah, it just goes to show that you're always having to make decisions as artists or illustrators or sculptors, particularly when you're working in quite a unique style. So it's it's not figurative. My clay pieces are very cartoon in their aesthetics, so it's always trying to kind of problem solve or troubleshoot in ways that kind of suit your own aesthetic. So essentially it's telling lies through your own kind of visual style, but you have to arrive at a solution that's is believable in your own aesthetic, really, if that makes any kind of sense at all. And so this is how I arrived at being a clay artist, really. But as I say, it's just really makes me really sad that I've just not been able to invest as much time into my clay work over the last year, just through illness. My MCAS means that I react to all sorts of stuff at different times. So I react really to the smell of polymer clay, but also I'm really worried about all of the pigments getting into my skin as well, because that could cause another reaction as well. So it's good to be reminded, however, that I can make models, and do make models occasionally. So I'd like to at least dip my hands in once a year, say, while I'm reacting to clay anyway, just to remind myself of the process, and to remind myself, Lizzie, you are an artist. It's just a little bit tricky at the moment, and that's why I invest myself in other creative activities as well, such as my illustrations for this channel, because, well, it all helps me feel creative, really. And here he is, my little model of Nathan Fielder. And I have to say, I really enjoyed the process of making Nathan for today's video. It was a lot harder to do than I anticipated, if I'm honest, because I'm going through quite a lot of chronic pain at the moment. So it's been a very slow process. But I have been thinking about content for this channel, why I've been taking kind of like a mini break from Creative Autistic, and I really passionately want to bring in a creative elements here and there, and I appreciate that's not for everybody, so it's not going to be every video, but I think now and again I'd like to do something that's creative or an act of creativity for the channel, but my one rule is that it will always be autism related, because I think that's really important for the channel, so that everybody feels like the video is for them, really. So whether or not you're an artist, because I know that very many of you are creative, I want the video content to be relatable to everybody watching it. So for instance, what I could do now and again is maybe do some art journaling, because it's something that I used to do when I was at college and I loved it, and I was kind of always known for creating really interesting creative journals or visual journals, and my tutor said to me that she just loved the thought of getting lost in one of my creative journals, because I just filled them with so much stuff, really. And also, I'd like to make a model on the channel now and again. So if you have any suggestions of either autistic people or perhaps people who are related to autism in some way, by all means let me know, because yeah, I'm really open to suggestions. It could be a character from a TV show as well, or it could be maybe an autistic YouTuber, who knows. But I'd love to hear your suggestions down below. And also, I'd love to hear about your special interests. And I really kind of feel the joy from all of you whenever you talk about your special interests in comments. It's kind of almost palpable, that energy. So yeah, I'd love to hear about your special interests, and more specifically, your most enduring special interest. For me, it's definitely been arts and illustration and all things creative. Um, so yeah, let me know down below. I'm just fascinated to hear. Oh, and also, I've just thought that another special interest that I have, and I've not mentioned, is of course YouTube. I've been making contents on YouTube for about 10 years through my other channel, Clay Disarray. And incidentally, I've made loads of process videos like the one today over on Clay Disarray. So if you'd like to see more, I will link my channel down below. But it was really through Clay Disarray that I decided to set up Creative Autistic as a YouTube channel, because I'd just been so used to documenting kind of stuff going on, really. I never mentioned my personal life too much on my other channel, and that's essentially why I set up a new channel for Creative Autistic, because an autism diagnosis or realising you're autistic is just such a massive thing, isn't it? So I just wanted to document that in some way. But yeah, I'm just really drawn to YouTube and making videos here, and it's certainly another special interest of mine, and I'm just delighted that you're all here witnessing it, really. I never expected in a million years to get any kind of community here. I just thought it would be a way for those who watched my Clay Disarray videos to catch up with this kind of diagnosis if they wanted to. So this has been such a surprise and a delight for me. So please know that I am so grateful for all of you here. So that's going to be it for today. Thanks for watching. Give it a like if you got this far, and I'll see you again soon.